All right, kids, you ready? It's story time. I wanted to find a book that I had that I thought was really uplifting, and I've got a challenge for you at the end of this story. I hope that none of you have read this before. If you have, you get to hear Miss Deets reading. Woot woot! This book is called The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lessmore by William Joyce. You will really like these pictures. Morris Lessmore loved words. He loved stories. He loved books. His life was a book of his own writing, one orderly page after another. He would open it every morning and write of his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. But every story has its upsets. One day the sky darkened and the winds blew and blew. Looks like Mr. Morris Lessmore was shaken up. Maybe you feel this same way, where your world has been turned topsy-turvy today. Till everything Morris knew was scattered, even the words of his book. Were some things scattered in your home today? Your brain feels scattered about working on school, at home? It can feel a little bit dark and a little bit confusing. He didn't know what to do or which way to go, so he began to wander and wander. Then a happy bit of happenstance came his way. Rather than looking down as had become his habit, Morris Lessmore looked up. What do you think it means to look up in your life instead of to look down? That could be a metaphor for something. Drifting through the sky above him, Morris saw a lovely lady. She was being pulled along by a festive squadron or group of flying books. Look at his face. Morris wondered if his book could fly, but it couldn't. It would only fall to the ground with a depressing thud. The flying lady knew Morris simply needed a good story, so she sent him her favorite. This book was an amiable fellow and urged Morris to follow him. Have you heard a story with a character like that? Why do you think Morris is gray and the picture is in color? The book led him to an extraordinary building where many books apparently nested. Morris slowly walked inside and discovered the most mysterious and inviting room he had ever seen. It was filled with the fluttering of countless pages, and Morris could hear the faint chatter of 1,000 different stories, as if each book was whispering an invitation to adventure. Now Morris is in color. Why do you think that is? What do you think that symbolizes? Then his new friend flew up to him and landed on his arm. It held itself open, as if hoping to be read. The room rustled to life. And so Morris's life among the books began. Morris tried to keep the books in some sort of order, but they always mixed themselves up. The tragedies needed cheering up and would visit with the comedies. The encyclopedias, weary of facts, would relax with the comic books. And fictions. All in all, it was an agreeable jumble. Morris found great satisfaction in caring for the books, gently fixing those with fragile bindings and unfolding the dog-eared pages of others. Wow. Sometimes Morris would become lost in a book and scarcely emerge for days. Have you ever read a book that you just wanted to spend all of your time reading? Didn't even think about being hungry or tired? Look at how deep he is into the book. What do you think the images try to tell us about how he felt about reading? Morris liked to share the books with others. Sometimes it was a favorite that everyone loved, and other times he found a lonely little volume whose tale was seldom told. Everyone's story matters, said Morris, and all the books agreed. So the people coming up to his window are in gray, and then when they have a book, they leave there in color, and they seem happy. What if your bed was like that? At night, after all the stories that needed telling had been told and everyone had settled down to their proper places on the shelves, the great big dictionary would get in the last word. Zzz, zzz. It was then that Morris Lessmore would once again write in his own book. He wrote of his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything he hoped for. Do you have things that are making you happy now? Or things that are making you sad? Maybe you could write your feelings down or draw a picture of what's been hard the past few days or what's been amazing. The days passed. Do you have a favorite reading spot? So did the months. Check out our book, friends. I'm sorry I'm using my phone, so it's hard to keep focused. And then years. And years. The books have little canes. And Morris Lessmore became stooped and crinkly. But the books never changed. Their stories stayed the same. Now his old friends took care of him the way he had once cared for them, and they read themselves to him each night. Then one day, he filled the last page in his book. He looked up and with a bittersweet sigh, "I guess it's time for me to move on." He's looking fondly at those books, isn't he? The books were sorry, but they understood. Morris put on his hat and took his cane, and as he went to the door, he turned and smiled, then waved goodbye. "I'll carry you all in here," he said, and he pointed to his heart. The books waved their pages, and Morris Lessmore flew away. And as he flew, he changed back to the way he'd been that long ago day when they'd all first met. The books were quiet for a while. Then they noticed that Morris Lessmore had left something behind. "It's his book," said his oldest friend. Inside was Morris's story, all of his joys and sorrows, all that he knew, and everything he hoped for. What's something you hope for this week? Then the books heard a small, expectant sound. There in the doorway was a little girl. She looked around with wonder. Then something fantastic happened. Morris Lessmore's book flew up to her and opened its pages. The little girl began to read. And so our story ends as it began, with the opening of a book. The end. My challenge for you now is to find a book that brings you joy and comfort today and read it with a family member. Take some time to dive, like Miss Dietz always says, dive into a book world, and you will feel so much comfort if you can do that. Go ahead and comment below what some of the books you've chosen to read are. Maybe Miss Dietz can look one up too.